everyone and welcome back to a new art video. Just like my last art video, I'm adding this one to my art journal series, even though it isn't technically an art journal page. But if you want to see how it's done, then just keep on watching. And I started out with a piece of heavy cardboard covered in some sort of canvas made for acrylic paints. And I also used a mask that I cut out from my silhouette machine. And I had to trim the bottom of the mask a bit to make it fit the canvas that I'm using. And the paints I will be using is acrylic paints, and I chose an orange and a light blue color from the Ranger Studio paints, and also some white paint that I had. And I'm going to make a very simple painting here, and I just use a paintbrush to create strokes of these colors all over the canvas. And I pour out a little bit of the paint onto a paper plate, and I just use my paintbrush to cover the canvas. I'm not really thinking too much about where to place the color, I just try to get it all over the canvas, making sure to have the brush strokes visible. And I pull from the center and out towards the edges to make it look like the paint sort of originates from the center of the image behind the deer. And I mostly want the painting to be blue, so I'm careful not to add too much of the orange. And I also mix in some of the white with the other two colors to get some variety in shades. And this will make the color less flat and give the painting some more dimension. And I also like it when you can really see the brush strokes on a painting, so I use a lot of paint and make sure not to smooth out the paint too much on the canvas. And when I'm happy with the color and the texture, I carefully pull off the stencil, and I use a craft knife to get beneath the edge. And I do this before the paint is dry, because if I would leave the stencil on there for too long, the paint would dry along the edges of the stencil and I would probably rip the paint away from the canvas when trying to remove the stencil. But if I pull it away before the paint is dry, I prevent this. But I do have to be careful not to touch the wet paint. And this paint dries really fast, and just after a few minutes I can actually touch the surface lightly without moving the paint around. So I then take a clean brush and start filling in the deer head with my white paint. You could leave it if you wanted to, but I don't really like the canvas texture showing in the middle, so I want to add paint there as well. Another way to do it would have been to paint the whole thing in white before I started. That way the deer would have already been painted white, but I decided not to do that since I was lazy and didn't have the patience to wait for the paint to dry, and also because I knew I would probably have to go back with the white anyway and cover up areas where the paint had seeped in behind the stencil. But I do recommend to paint the whole canvas with white gesso before adding any other paints though, since this will help the paints to adhere better and also provide a better base for the other mediums you put on top. But as I said, I'm kinda lazy and I didn't bother with that. And then when my whole thing was done, I just set it aside to dry for a while. And since I still had a lot of paints on my plate that I didn't want to waste, I brought out my art journal and placed my stencil on an empty page. And then I just used the baby wipe and picked up the paints that I had left over and just spread them all over the page. This way I got a great start on an upcoming art journal page and I didn't waste any materials. And that was all I did for this art piece. Another very simple and easy way to create art without actually having to be particularly good at painting. So I hope you liked it and hopefully you got inspired to make some art yourself. And I also wanted to let you all know that I'm leaving for Thailand tomorrow and I won't be posting any new videos until I get back in about 2 weeks. So thank you so much for watching, and I will be back with more videos and giveaways when I return. So thank you!